Well, this is just the edits, and these are the ones to be edited, and these are what we refer to finally as new news. And they haven't been really looked at except to be scribbled in the book here, and Annabelle's taken them out.
So you just write it, you do it by hand, and then Annabelle transcribes it on typing?
Yes, she and then it comes back to me, and then that gives me a better way to see it, in terms of line form and stanza breaks and rhythms and clarifications and eliminations and so on.
That, by the way, reminds me that we saw an incredibly wonderful documentary by Al Pacino about Richard III, in which he and a bunch of other actors are talking about this play and about Shakespeare's iambic pentameter and stuff like that. We'll send you the link to it. I think you would enjoy it.
I love Al. He's just really my kind of guy. I just love him. He's a shit kicker all the way, isn't he? So this was a little poem called The Little Packs of Little Men. And so I remember Ferris Bascom, the fat boy, when we were in the 6th grade at Highland Park School. We were all pretty much the same back then, and now, little packs of little men. Except Ferris was almost always smiling, like a friend, and always alone. It was that time when we didn't know there was a future, and it would be ours. We never thought that Ferris had feelings too. We never thought, I guess. Even when we ganged around him and hit him with our fist, he didn't hit us back. We were busy growing up, practicing to be men, practicing to be better than Ferris. And when we got tired of beating him up, we went home leaving Ferris bruised, and kept on growing up, learning to feel like real men. Heartbreaking, isn't it? So you want to go to one next heartbreak is Mother?
Yeah.
That's the next heartbreak. Mother, with a little background, was in high school the absolute queen of the ball. She had the world in the palm of her hand. She was beautiful and talented in every way. She sang, she acted, she danced, she painted, she sculpted. And Daddy came marching down the aisle there at the end of her high school senior year in the high school finale play with the big armful of roses and handed them to her over the spotlight unannounced. And so he swept her along there. He was 10 years older than she was. And she kept on wanting to recreate that feeling of exhilaration and success, I guess, something like that. That hard one to overcome. That egocentricity that we, especially us men, suffer from. So anyway, Mother, as a little guy, she never seemed to have time for me, although she was good to me. But she wanted me to be perfect, and that didn't really sit well with small children. And looking back, even though I know deeply that she loved me, she wanted me to be perfect so that it would reflect well on her. So that's a straight shot at some of my reflections of Mother, although I go on other poems to credit her with, to credit her with a lot of my drive and my self-esteem, really. And so in my little book of poems here, my first chapter, I speak about her in this poem called Apprentice. I thought she was always angry. That wrinkle in her brow aimed at me, the one appointed to strut like an ass, display my colors as a peacock. Apprentice at love, tearing little rips in my dignity, rips that would heal in time, jagged like a gash. Mother taught me well to use words like suffering, ungrateful, appreciate, words that would penetrate like a splinter driven beneath my fingernail. But in time, a long time, I came to believe she must have loved me. What better way could she show how not to close the openings in me to places that hurt? Fuck. It's really a ringer. Well, that's this 5th grade arithmetic class. In the 5th grade, I had a teacher. Her name was Miss Jackson. Looking back, she must have been about maybe 28. Wore high heels, silk stockings. I was a 5th grade, right? With that, in those days, the silk stockings had a seam outside of the back that you wanted to keep straight. Wore hair, which must have been long. I never saw it long, but it was swept up on top of her head. She was beautiful. And she was, aside from Daddy, she was the first one to really verify my life. We moved about continuously through those early years of my life. And Father was in real estate, and he was trying to sell houses, and it was I was born in 31, so I was right at the tail end of the Depression, but at the beginning, really, of hard times for our country. So he was a country boy, and he never was formally educated except in night school. So anyway, Miss Jackson verified that I had something going on. I wasn't able to look at it until 60 years later. So I'd say, she says, because I learned in my 5th grade arithmetic class, with divisions, sometimes there's a remainder. And because in quantum mechanics we know that all the universe is joined below the level of understanding, how everything began from one small singular thing before it was suddenly released. Although we are still able to find each other like two protons across the vast expanse of undivided light years. Like an old lover, it's never quite done. Even a chance meeting over a couple of beers reminds you that when you divide someone by someone else, and it doesn't come out even, you have to carry what's left. So anyway, Miss Jackson.
How did she show you that she verified who you were?
Let's see. I got another poem. I thought I was going to read the poem that I was thinking about, but it worked into that one. Let's see if I can find that other one. It should be in this section because I sectioned the poems, the books divided into 4 parts, and I took the title of a poem within the section that sort of vivified the sentiment of the poems within that section. So that was how I came about arriving at the poems in those individual sections. Don't find it there. It's the second section is called When You First Appeared. Each section is headed by watercolor. One of my watercolors that I thought sort of embodies the spirit of the poetry, as it is poetry. Well, it's here someplace, I don't know. Probably find it someplace along the line. Here's a good poem that that says a lot about Father. I called him Daddy, and later in years I called him Pappy, and all my friends called him Pappy. He was one of these wonderful, beautiful big guys about your size, Raymond, and a big strong country boy, and very handsome. He was the nurturing part of my upbringing. And so in this poem I've talked about Daddy. This poem is called Allegory. Like Goya, my father in his last years held no more illusion for his future. The blue had leached from his eyes like memory of Dachau, the incineration of Hiroshima, the 29 depression that left remnants of regret dangling from his life, the faded green LaSalle with wooden spokes he refused to sell. Grandfather bringing groceries to our house on Sunday, not the enduring light of Daddy's kindness when he spoke to me as a boy, the softness of his voice when I lost my way, but how he gentled me like our horses when they were wild-eyed and confused. The day after he died, he received the news by a letter I opened that he had failed his real estate exam again. How could I understand that everything I had gathered in the world was little more than bloated carp on a riverbank we fished together? That it would bring me here even now, silk thin, easily torn. So that was Peppy. Book has a lot of good stuff like that. There's I guess in a very, very profound way, the poetry is a autobiography of your life. Taking all those years that's been gathered up like a pile of sand, heaped up in a little pile, and that's your life, you know, wherever it's come. So the poet uses that as basically a way in to understanding himself, really. I think that's probably one of the most important things about poetry for me, my kind of poetry. It's a way of getting into myself as deeply as possible. And poetry provides that probe. I use that probe every morning as a practice.
You have children.
I got 2 children. One of them is dead, the small boy. Big boy, at 17, died in a car crash. That was a loss of losses, like any one of our children. And that thing, that child is taken out of your life like that. It really impacts us. So Gregory's loss was big. He was very, very talented, wonderful, soft young man. And then Tanya's the daughter. She's now 41. And she's a beauty too. Wonderful.
Do you have poems about either one of them?
About Gregory, I do. Want me to read one of those? Let's see. Let's try and read. See if I can find the title. You know, I'm not very good at this. The poem that I'm trying to find is a poem about a butterfly that, for me, embodied Gregory. A butterfly, that single butterfly, hung around me all day. Wouldn't leave. Often would light on me.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's here someplace. I can, maybe with a little time, I could find it. But those are very poignant, sort of poignant probes into our lives, when those things that are deeply meaningful happen to us. Sometimes we happen to them. So those are the things that are really milestones somehow, and poetry helps to keep those in focus. That's what I really try to do with the poems, is keep my life focused. Hard in the .com world, everything's racing along, and you know, I don't want to write angry poems. I'm not angry, but I see it. I see it with disappointment, you know. The mother and daddy and I used to go out. In those days, we'd go out for a drive.
Mm-hmm.
Go out for a drive. We'd almost always go out for a drive on Sunday. We'd take a picnic, and we'd just drive along the roads in Chattanooga and find a really